Everybody, we'd like to start. So I'd like to call this meeting, this forum order. So welcome everybody. My name is Dave Colbert, Chairman of Planning and Zoning. I remember that much. The other members of Planning and Zoning who are here this evening are Steve Sicardi, Ben Gray Jr., Anna Tamel, Jill Cutler. Members who weren't able to be here this evening are Peter Kalmus, James Laporta, and Ginny Potter. Also present is our CEO and person who accomplishes everything, Karen, at the side there. At this evening's forum, we'll first hear from Gordon. Then I will offer a brief overview of what a town plan is, how it comes about, the part this forum is going to play in that process, and what comes afterwards. Then we'll break into 5 subgroups, and we'll, for about an hour altogether, and then we'll join up again, share some things that occurred at that hour, have some questions, and adjourn. And if at any time anyone is feeling the need of sweets and cider, it's out there. We aren't supposed to have it in the gym here, the food. So having said that, Gordon.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you all for coming. I go to a lot of meetings, and I can't think of a more important one that I've been to in a very long time. And I guess why that is because there's a lot of information that comes across my desk, which I like to think of as your desk, concerning the town in the course of the year and course of the month. And there's been a lot of information coming out about sustainability, sustainable communities, which first started talking about energy sources and doing energy audits on buildings, and now it's become a discussion, especially in Northwest Connecticut, about sustaining communities on a very broad basis, which includes not just energy or the environment, but includes the people in those communities. And I think that's why I put together some thoughts, which I have. They're short, but I put them under a title of Bending the Curve. That's Bending the Curve, which was originally coined to talk about the necessity to address climate change by bending a projection by taking current action today to a better outcome than what people are projecting. And then the people talking about healthcare borrowed also to talk about healthcare outcomes. So I borrowed from them to talk about the town. Last Sunday, some of us saw the movie that Catherine and Dominique's company, the Civic Life Project, put together with help of high school kids also from Cornwall. And it was called The Dawn of Decline. And it was talking about the decline in school enrollments and populations, particularly in Cornwall and Falls Village. And initially I thought that title was kind of edgy and gloomy, but then the next thing that came across my desk was a map or a graph that came in from the University of Connecticut, and I copied it off, not very well, in black and white. It's really in color, but this came in about 2 weeks ago from the University of Connecticut, and it shows that the town has actually lost 100 year-round residents in the last 5 years, and obviously as a town of 1,400 people, previously now we're down to apparently to 1,300. We can't do that too many times without having a big impact. So what we're seeing here is something that's real and something that we need to pay attention to. And it's a complicated problem, but we have procedures and opportunities to address those. It's also not just a Cornwall problem. Litchfield County apparently lost more population in the last 5 years than any other county in the tri-state region. And there's reasons for that. But the effects on this play themselves out in a small town like ours, probably more than it does in other places. And I think the solutions to our problems that are becoming increasingly apparent, they're not going to be coming out of Washington or Hartford for different reasons. The solutions to our problems are either in this room or in this community. And for that reason, I thank you all for coming to the meeting and start thinking about trying to bend this curve, which shows Cornwall projected to go down to a town of 900 people in 20 years. So I think that coincides with really why there needs to be a town planning process, why we have to take cooperative action and try to bend that curve in a different direction. There's a lot of opportunities in a small town in Connecticut because we don't have county government here. We have a lot of home rule. We make a lot of decisions for ourselves, and certainly by this turnout, we have a talented and engaged electorate. So we do have opportunities to do things. The demographic problems we see as a town go beyond this school, but it's appropriate we're at this school because this is an important part of our community. It's an important asset to our community for many reasons. It's successful in its operations. It does a great job educating our kids and has for a very long time. But you can also see that with the declining enrollment, that's a major issue facing the town. Fortunately, our school board has decided to take this on and has given everyone here some homework appropriate as we're in the school. And there's a flyer over on the bench. And at their last meeting, they've voted to start a process to get input and start making some decisions about the future of education in the town of Cornwall. And so there is a flyer, and they're soliciting everybody's email so they can keep them up on the process. There'll be 3 meetings starting on this January 19th at 6:30, 9 o'clock here at the CCS gym. And there's another meeting in February and one in March. And it's being done by a well-known facilitator to get community input on education in Cornwall. So you are asked to fill out these forms and put your email addresses and your contact information in the basket on the table. I think it's also important to show that, or to say that this issue was not on the radar when we were thinking about the town plan 10 years ago. So that's how much things can change in a town that sometimes doesn't seem to change at all. The implications of these changing demographics go well beyond the school, and its impact on the community goes across the street to the firehouse, where the average age of volunteer responders is creeping up. Also, our volunteer organizations who give this community its character are also graying, and their laws will transform the town and increase its tax bills very quickly. Another thing I'd like to say is clearly the town needs more young people, and we must make it easier for people to live and work here. We have options and opportunities as a town to do this. By building on the work of the Planning and Zoning Commission in this process, the Cornwall Housing Corporation, the Economic Development Commission, is possible with joint effort and partnerships to improve the future of our town. It's also possible to improve this future without causing impact to the environment, which is so important to everyone here. Last year we've seen Northeast Builders, Trinity Center, and now Curly's Cafe come back to life. And these are all good signs of community vitality. Each month, I talk to young families and business people who want to live or work here. Is there room for them in Cornwall? I hope there is. There's a need for more social spaces in town. Who would not welcome a local craft brew pub or other creative enterprises? There's a lot of work ahead, but through this process we can bend the curve, and thank you all again for coming. And look at here's the town report, which I think is great because it gives a snapshot of where we are as a community, all the activities that go on, all these organizations that are in place to make Cornwall the town it is a better place. But I think if you look at the first 2 pages, you can see we welcomed 2 young people to town, one of whom's here, and unfortunately there were 22 people who passed on. So I think that's the reality that you can see right on the first 2 pages of the town report. But there's also a lot of very positive things in here that shows you what a remarkable town to live in. So again, thank you all for coming.
Okay, so as Gordon said, the challenges that are faced by Cornwall, chiefly demographic, isn't only Cornwall, of course, it is a local, it's a regional and statewide problem as well. The asset, as everyone here knows, the assets that we have in Cornwall are very special and might help us bend that curve. Our scenic beauty has attracted tourists and weekenders. That's helped that's probably the strongest influence on our local economy and shouldn't be underestimated. We also, of course, have a strong agricultural history and identity, and as Gordon mentioned and everyone here proves, we also, of course, have a very strong, energetic, public-spirited populace. Building on these strengths to guide our future is the purpose of a town plan. A town plan is supposed to document what currently is the case for a town and help the town move towards a future of its choice. That sounds sort of boilerplate, but if there is going to be any big change in our regulations that govern land use, the first place they ought to appear is in a town plan. If they aren't in a town plan and someone wants to, the issue comes up and some major change is proposed, it's a lot harder to support it from the point of view of planning and zoning if it isn't previously supported in a town plan. The town plan is the closest we're able to come to having a document that expresses the overall collective will of Cornwall. So the creation of a town plan is the primary time residents are able to become involved and help shape the regulations. In our last town plan, it had about 60 specific recommendations spread over 4 major groups. Over the last 8 years, we've addressed a great many of them. The ones that haven't been addressed haven't been because we just ignored them. It was just, some of them are impractical, and some of them, yes, some things that end up in a town plan are not so easily implemented. But some large actions that stem from specific recommendations in the last town plan include model regulations that improve the environmental protection of the Housatonic River. Other towns are looking at those to copy them and stick them in their own regs. Also, regulations to make it easier to create accessory apartments. Now, on planning and zoning, you can't. You have to think of these things as huge achievements. You can't and get some satisfaction from that. After we passed that accessory apartment regulation that altered the regs that we had, within about a year and a half, we had applications for about 8 accessory apartments, whereas in the previous 15 years, or I had been on planning and zoning, I'm not sure we had one. So regulations are really able to make a difference. For anyone interested in the overall list that came out of the last town plan and the status of that list, each of the tables has a copy of that. It's called our implementation list. Thanks to Karen for bringing that list to our attention over and over again. Also, outgrowths of the last town plan are the creation of new groups such as the conservation and economic commissions, as well as some other study groups. All of them are likely to provide input into the town plan, which is also a reason we are capable of having a forum such as this without hiring a high-priced consultant to try to motivate people and organize it for us, because Cornwall has a lot of good planning happening at this moment that can go straight into the work on a new town plan. So I hate to say it, but the real work of the town plan update will happen after this forum. We can't expect in one evening a thoughtful examination of all the issues, but we are able to hope for new ideas to come up and be brought to our attention, and also we're able to hope for motivating some of you perhaps to volunteer to work on the subcommittees that will be working on the new town plan. The 5 subcommittees that will be appointed by planning and zoning before the end of the year are the subcommittees involved with natural resources, community resources, economic development, housing, and attracting and keeping young families. Each subgroup will aim to represent a diverse group of citizens and perspectives. So it's not just one group with one perspective. There will also be an announcement in the upcoming November Chronicle soliciting volunteers as well. So after this forum and after the November Chronicle, hopefully we'll have a list to choose from. Each subcommittees will aim to have several community members, and each will be chaired by a member of Planning and Zoning. Each of these groups is going to meet after the survey, after the forum here, over the period of between 1 and 2 years, and study their respective areas, make recommendations to be considered for the town plan. We're going to attempt to have surveys on these recommendations, largely via the internet, which is another reason it's going to be so helpful for people to give their emails if we don't already have them, so that you all can be alerted to when a survey is available. We'll aim to also hold regular informational sessions throughout the process to update progress and on this town plan process, and share information and ask for public input at those meetings. This process ought to be concluded within a couple of years, but it's conceivable that an individual section might be voted on at a public hearing earlier than that. The 5 do not have to be put to public hearing at the same time. So that's the overview about the town plan process. We now will have about an hour to break into our subgroups. This hour is going to be split into 2 sessions, 2 half-hour sessions. So the first half hour is the aim of the first half hour is to avoid having people gravitate to the topic of their special interest, and to find out a little bit about some other topic. So towards that end, starting, are you going to be part of this? Could be, or you will? Okay. So start towards that end. I'd like us to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting with, I guess, Richard, and then going row by row. So like 1. So count out.
1, 2, 3,
4.
5, 6.
No, 1.
1 did not.
1. 2,
3, 4, 5,
1,
2, 3,
4, yeah.
5, 1,
2, 3,
4, 5,
1,
2, 3,
4.
okay. 5. Oh, we counted out 5.
1.
2, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5.
1.
2,
3. 4.
5. 1,
2.
3,
4.
1.
2.
Okay. So that after half an hour, I'll make an announcement, and you could all go to the topic of your choice, and that'll be interesting for us to see also, how that changes things. if you cannot stay the full hour and you're dying to go to the topic of your choice, then please do so. So after that full hour, we'll come back. The chairs of the respective subcommittees will give small reports of what happened. We'll have some questions and answers, and of course have any from Susie, some sweets and cider along the way. So please, each of the boards there has a number. I think it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go. The half hour has started.
Okay, well, I'm going to go over to number 1.
One of my clients is talking about your work.
I don't know where.
Hey, Richard,
Hey, Peter.
we're number 1.
Number 1, huh? Well, I think I should go to check out each group and then I'll be back.
Help me find 2, Richard.
2 is over there. I'll just go to the other groups. There's 2. There's 3 over here. Hey, how are you?
Good.
There's 4 and 5. So I'll come back with the final report after our group meets. And that's it for part 1 of the planning and zoning meeting.